created this handout for you to print off, and then you can listen to the explanation if you're not quite sure what's going on. Um, Demand can be hard. Understanding the difference between quantity demanded and demand is confusing. So once you get down the idea of quantity demanded and you're moving on to demand, have this sheet down beside you when you are starting to graph. I cannot express how important it is to graph because after we do demand, we do supply. And after we do supply, we put supply and demand together. And then we start shifting supply curves and demand curves, and you've got 4 different curves. You've got lines all over the place when we start looking at price floors and price ceilings. I don't want to scare you because it's not scary if you graph it. If you don't graph it, then it becomes an ugly nightmare that you can't see in your head. So I am begging you to graph this, and this is the very beginning here. We've already gone over the law of demand, and you know there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity. So if you notice there aren't any prices on here, it's really not necessary. What you do know is this point is 0, and the numbers get bigger going this way, and the numbers get bigger going this way. If your numbers are not getting bigger going this way and this way, then you have graphed it wrong. Go back and review how to graph. So what we know about this original price here is that it's higher than this price here. And what we can see here, at the higher price, we have a lower quantity. When the price starts to come down, this point over here is a higher quantity. So we have this inverse relationship that's showing in the demand curve. Go back to that video if you're still not sure about that. You have to understand the foundations. I have put graph paper on the web page, so if you want to download, you can print off as many pages as you want, but I'm also going to have graph paper on the table in my room in one of the trays, so make sure that you are graphing. First thing you're going to do, whatever this is, and the graph paper has this, all you're going to have to do if there's not already a demand curve is to just draw a downward sloping demand curve, and we're always going to label our demand curve. I always label it D1. What that tells me is that is my first curve. Sorry about that. I knew that was close. So you're going to pick a price, and then you're going to pick a quantity. And then from there, you can make any changes, whether it's a new price or a whole entire new curve. Make sure you're labeling this as price and this is quantity. That is always. If you flip it, you're going to have to go back to the very beginning. You have to know this is price, this is quantity, downward sloping curve, label it D1. Label your first price P1 and your second price P2, first quantity. This has A's and B's, I don't care, as long as you know the first one from the second one. The other thing I noticed as some people start working through the handouts, when you have different ones to choose from, you'll always notice kind of that they'll do an increase in demand as D2 and a decrease in demand as D3. What I need for you to understand is you're numbering these in the order that you're changing them. So A is the first price, B is the second price. If you're drawing your first curve and the first headline that you read is a decrease, you're going to draw your second curve and label it D2. All right, so the 2s and the 3s are just, this is my first curve, this is my second curve, just so we can distinguish between the two. So once again, label at the top what product or service. So what you're going to see is questions like, you changed the price of blueberries. How does that affect my demand for strawberries? So you're going to label this. The questions ask, how is this affecting my demand for strawberries? At the top, you're going to label this strawberries so you know what you're talking about. The next thing you're going to do is read the headline and ask yourself, is this a change in the price today? Or is this a change in something else? So I have another curve down here. If the only thing that is changing is the price of the product or the service at that moment, then we're going to change your quantity demanded. We know that a change in price does not change demand. So once again, the whole entire curve is your demand. You've said at this moment, if it was this price, this is the quantity I would be willing and able to purchase. If it was this price, the quantity is different. If it's this price, the quantity is different. So the curve is your demand. Moving on up and down the same curve because of a change in price is not a change in demand, it's a change in quantity demanded. All right, so label your first point here. B and C is just to differentiate. All right, so if the price went up and that's the only thing you're graphing, move it up, and that's going to be B because that's your second one. If you just put points on here and don't label, I don't know if you realize that an increase in price is going this way or a decrease in price is going this way, so I can't give you credit for it. Label your first price as A or P1, P2, I don't care how you do it. Label your next one. This would be P1, Q1, P2, Q2. So if anything else is happening other than a change in price at that moment, that's a change in demand, and you're going to be creating a whole entire new curve. So if it's an increase, it shifts to the right because if you notice, 600 is bigger than 500, and so if I'm saying at $60 I was only willing to purchase 500, and for some reason, not changing the price is not changing, we're saying I will be willing and able to buy more at $60 than I was before, which is going to be the case at every single price. You don't have to show every single price, but if you're willing to buy more at this price, then you're probably willing to buy more at every single price. That's why we have the new curve. We don't create a whole entire new schedule. We're just assuming if we're buying more at this price, then that's probably the case at every single price. And so we'll draw it and notice they labeled and started with D, so to differentiate and say this is my next one, they labeled that D1. So as long as you're going D to D1, D1 to D2, however you're doing that, and then D, and then D1 would be this way if you're just decreasing. So that's an increase because something is happening. And notice I keep saying a change in the price today, because a change in the price in the future will cause you to buy more or less. If you know it's going to go up, you're going to buy more today, even when the price doesn't change. If you know the price is going to go down later, then people are going to buy fewer today and take advantage and wait till the sale takes place. And then this is a decrease in demand. So if the headline is going to cause you to buy less without changing the price, so if this is the price, we're saying at that price, I'm willing and able to buy less. At this price, willing, able to buy less. At this price, that creates our whole entire new demand curve that's to the left of the old one. Movement on the same curve, change in price of the product today. So you're going to label, you're going to draw your curves, you're going to label everything. What am I looking at the demand for? Is this a change in the price of that product today? Then I'm moving on the same one. If it's anything else, is it causing me to buy more at that price or less at that price? And then I put down here the determinants of demand. I found this in a book. So if you can remember tribe, tastes and preferences, price of related goods, you'll have to remember that those are substitutes and complements. Income of buyers, normal, inferior, neutral. The number of buyers, and then expectations for the future. Those are the things that cause the curve to move and shift either to the right or to the left. And you will notice not one of them says the price of the product is changing. Something else is changing.